Hello all. Welcome to Get Set Law. In today's video, we'll be talking about the exam analysis of MHCET 3-year LLB 2024. So the exam happened today in the morning hours, 9 to 11 a.m. The first slot happened. So let us talk about what was the first take of the students after they appeared in the exam. What were the questions that were asked, so that those who have their exam tomorrow, they get some help, they get some idea about the level of difficulty of paper and how the exam will be. So if we talk about the first take of the exam, so as the reactions of students, it were mixed. The reactions were comparatively a mixed one. No one mentioned that the paper was difficult. Everyone's reaction was that the paper was comparatively easier. And as this we have seen with the pattern of MHCET also, that MHCET usually sets easier paper. The paper is comparatively easier as compared to other examinations. So when state level examination is being considered, or when someone is targeting the top colleges at MHCET level, the paper is comparatively relatively easier. So paper was easier. Some student was of the opinion that the paper was a bit difficult, so a bit moderate. We can say that paper was moderate. It was not very difficult, but it was not very easy. So it was a mixed opinion. So let us understand, or let us look at the highlights of the paper. So first of all, let's talk about cutoff. So when we talk about cutoff of the paper, so considering that the paper was easy to moderate, we can say that cutoff pretty much for Maharashtra student as well as for outside Maharashtra student, it will be pretty much same like the previous year. So we can predict a cutoff of approximately 120. That can be a safe score, 120 to 130 to get into the top colleges. If you are ranging somewhere in between this 120 to 130, you can predict that, okay, maybe the chances are that you will get some good colleges, the top colleges that are there. If we talk about the pattern or the question types that were there in different sections, so first of all, let's talk about legal section. So legal section, as you can see, that most of the questions were principal fact based. So there were questions, when the questions from law came, so it was mostly principal fact based. A principle was given on the basis of which you have to give the answer to the factual situation that was there. Some of the concept based questions were there. Again, it was very easy, like maybe fundamental right questions. They are talking about what is the meaning of liberty, or what is the right, fundamental right available to citizens as well as non-citizens. So these kind of questions were there. Assertion reasoning questions were there. Few questions, 2-3 questions were based on assertion reasoning. Lastly, static legal GK was there. Again, static legal GK was also comparatively easier. Questions like full form of IPC was asked. So these were some of the questions when we talk about legal. We'll be discussing in depth about the question types, question patterns that were there in the legal, different subtopics, what all pointers are important. We'll be talking about that in next few minutes. So please wait till the end, watch this video till the end, because this video is going to be very important, very useful for those students who have their paper tomorrow. Now, next, coming about logical reasoning. So when we talk about logical reasoning, we have, again, as I've mentioned in my previous videos also, so most of the questions were based on the topics like puzzles, analogies, odd one out, directions. These questions were repeated, and there were multiple questions. There were multiple questions on puzzles, data interpretation. These were mostly the questions there, and questions were not very tricky. With simple concepts, simple knowledge, it was easy to solve puzzle. It was possible, very much possible, to deduce the analogy or to find out the odd one out. So it was possible. It was not very difficult. It was what I can say is it was a moderate paper. It was not very difficult, and the questions from logical reasoning was not very easy. So it was comparatively a moderate section. Next, coming about English languages. So in English language, there were total of 4 RCs, 4 reading comprehensions were there, from which questions were mostly direct based on reading comprehension. And some of the questions were there which were asking about the phrases, idioms. So these questions were there. Apart from it, there were a few questions that were asking about central idea of the passage, summary of the passage. So these questions were there, but passages were also comparatively smaller. So those of who faced this issue, that I was not able to complete my paper within the time, my marks were not able to finish within the stipulated time. So I hope that in exam you will not face such issues, because papers paper is comparatively easier there. Then again, we have seen that a lot of questions from grammar was there. So tenses were there, adjective was there, articles were there. So we have questions from grammar, phrases and idioms, again sentence rearrangement. These were the common topics that reoccurred in English languages. Next is GK, general knowledge. So general knowledge had a mix of current affairs as well as the static GK. Again, current affairs was not that difficult that you could not have answered. It was comparatively easier. It was something which you must have read in your day-to-day news. If you would have been preparing for GK, you must have come across those topics in your day-to-day news. Some very important topics like sports may it was they were asking about how many rings are there in the logo of Olympics, or who is the first women athlete to win the Olympic medal. They were talking about different devices, space mission of NASA, who authored our national anthem Jana Gana Mana. These questions were there, so these were relatively easier questions. So now let us so this was the overall analysis or highlight of MCT paper that happened in the morning slot. So let's discuss about section by section analysis, that what all section or what all points are relevant, what all points are important with respect to sections. So when we talk about legal section first, so first let's understand the questions that were there from legal section. So in Contract Act, the questions mostly were from undue influences, fraud, void agreement, wagering agreement. So this was with respect to Contract Act. The questions were mostly ranging from formation of contract, voidability of contract. So these were the topics from which questions were there. In criminal law, again, the questions were from specific instance of crime, that is with respect to attempt to theft, that is with respect to crime against property. Again, the questions were from defenses, general defenses. This also I've mentioned in my previous videos that this topic with respect to criminal law, these topics are very much important with respect to property, with respect to human body, general defenses. Generally, the questions come from this topic only. Again, there were questions from constitution, fundamental right, which I have also mentioned in the previous videos, that fundamental rights are again a very important subject, specifically for the questions, the concept based questions, the principal facts question. Apart from it, the legal GK, static legal GK also comes from constitution. And then from torts question was from nuisance also. And so these are just a few bits and pieces of certain questions that were there from different subjects and from different topics. Now next is static legal GK. So the questions were from full form of IPC, famous first, as I mentioned, who is the first judge of Supreme Court. Then Nirbhaya case questions were there. When was the Constitution of India appointed? Number of High Court judges, fundamental rights. These were the basic questions. These questions you must have come across when you're preparing, when you're reading for the legal section. So the questions even from static legal GK was very much attemptable, and you must have, if you are preparing, if you have prepared, if you have devoted some time, these questions are easier for you to attempt. You must have come across these questions, you must have come across these topics. So this was overall legal section was comparatively easier than rest of the section. So next, let's talk about the English section. So as I already mentioned that there were total of 4 RCs, reading comprehensions, in which questions were from idioms and phrases, central theme, central idea of the passage, summary, and then the direct questions were there from the passages itself. Then in grammar, questions were from tenses, articles, adjective, pronouns. So we have seen few questions, approximately 5 to 10 questions from grammar itself. Then the questions were from idioms and phrases, sentence rearrangement, spelling error. A lot of questions were there from spelling errors and vocabulary. And then the error spotting was there, synonyms, antonyms were there, one word substitution was also there. So these were the topics from which the questions were there. Again, a lot of questions were there from sentence rearrangements, spelling errors, error spotting, vocabulary, sentence, and phrases. So these were, and phrases were also very easier, once in a blue moon, and these kind of phrases were there. So it was comparatively easier. English section was also comparatively easier. Now let's talk about the GK section, where students are mostly worried that what will be the question, what kind of questions will be asked in GK section, what will be the topics that will be covered. So as you can see on the screen, the topics were also very general. It was not very difficult. So questions were from national and international organizations. Questions were like BRICS Summit, SARC, WTO. These questions were there. These organizations, the headquarters of these organizations were asked. Then the space mission of NASA was talked about. The questions were from science and technology about different devices. Then one question was also about the dance festival of the famous dance of Assam. Then there were certain questions from geography like Silicon Valley of India, or there were certain questions from history. It was talking about some tax imposition during Mughal Empire. So there were certain questions from that also. Again, as I mentioned, UNESCO heritage sites are important. So questions were there from UNESCO heritage sites. Then the questions were also from Olympics and national anthems. So these were some of the topics in GK section from which the majority of the questions were there, and it was not very difficult. GK section, I can say that it was moderate. So if you must have like devoted even 2 months for this preparation, it would have been sufficient. If you have read certain, if some good books or certain topics that covered GK, or maybe you have covered the static part and some of the current affairs news, the GK would have been easier. At least 80% of the GK section would have been easier for you to attempt. So this was overall difficulty level of GK section. Now let's talk about the logical reasoning section. So in logical reasoning section, questions were from analogy. As I have already mentioned this to you repeated time, that the questions are there. Most of the questions in logical reasoning section is from analogy section. So again, this year also the questions were from analogy. Odd one out questions were there. Acha, this year majority, most like approximately 5-6 questions were there from puzzle. So puzzle again is very important topic this year for logical reasoning. So make sure you revise all the tips and tricks for puzzle and solving analogy. Then the questions were also there from direction, blood relation. These were very easy. Coding, decoding questions were also comparatively easier. It was not very difficult. Some things, some tips that when you look at the question, you will be able to identify, okay, these are the certain directions, or these are the certain codes that are being used. So it was very easy to decode and find out the pattern. Questions were also there from calendar, and then again there were two questions from critical reasoning as well. One was a statement was given and the course of action was asked, and with respect to a passage, the conclusion was being asked. So certain two questions were there from critical reasoning also. So make sure you give like you just give a look to the critical reasoning part also before you go for your exam. Questions were there from number series and sitting arrangement. Sitting arrangement, it was linear arrangement question, and the question was easy. It was not very tricky. So if you know the basic concepts of arranging the data, of analyzing the data, you will be able to get through the logical reasoning. Data interpretation section was also very easy. So once you can make the table, it was very easy for you to give the answers, and it was not very difficult to make that table also. Again, as I have also mentioned in the last video when I was talking about different topics that are relevant in logical reasoning section, I've also mentioned that please have a look at maths topics, also topics that are there from QT or maths. So in this paper also there was one question which was based on age, but it was not difficult. The question specifically was with respect to the fact that the age of certain people on this date, the sum total of age of certain people on this date is this, and what will be the sum total of their age 3 years from today, or 3 years before the date before today. So this was the question. It was not very difficult. If you know the basic terms or basic formulas of a ratio, basic arithmetics, linear equation, this will be easier for you to solve. So just not most of your time, but just 5-10 minutes, or maybe half an hour time to look at the formulas that are there in maths also, so that you are not missing out on this topic also. So when I talk about the overall analysis of the paper, legal and English language was comparatively easier. And when we talk about GK and logical, it was moderate. So paper overall, we can say that paper was easy to moderate. It was not very difficult. It was not very easy. Two sections were easier, two sections were moderate. So this was the overall analysis of the paper. And if you have any question, and if you have any doubt with respect to your tomorrow's paper, if you want to give your inputs about how was your paper, so do let us know in the comment box. And till then, all the best. to everyone who's having their exam tomorrow, and thank you so much.